Welcome to the October Strategic Planning Committee. I have a few preliminaries which I have to read out, which you probably all know them off by heart with the number of meetings you attend, but I will read them out for you as I've been asked to. And that is one that my name is Councillor Tony Locke and I am chairing this committee. I would like to welcome everybody, including members of the public who are here in the room and online. Today's meeting will be run using the webcasting system via Microsoft Teams. Other elected members of members of the public and officers may physically or remotely join the meeting to speak on specific agenda items or observe. The agenda pack is available via ModGov or directly from the council's website from the link which has been sent out to members. When you are invited to speak, please could you speak clearly into the microphone and state who you are for the benefit of anybody who is listening to the meeting so they can identify who is speaking. Please remember to turn off microphones, cameras and mobile phones, which I have done. And I was caught out recently, so it happens to us all. For those who wish to see subtitles, there is a facility in MS Teams under the ellipse button called Turn on Live Captions, which provide subtitles on the screen. As the agendas are now viewed electronically, could I kindly request that members and officers, and we've got to get used to this, refer to the page numbers from the published agenda pack to assist all present and those online in finding the appropriate information. Finally, there are no planned fire drills today, and in the event of a fire alarm, please follow the fire exit signs and congregate outside. If anybody present might need assistance, there are officers present who will be able to assist them from the Democratic Services team. Thank you very much. Our first item on the agenda is apologies for absence. Now, I have one apology that I know of, and that is Andy Saunton, who unfortunately, when he came back from holiday, was notified of a funeral which he could not get out of for today. So he is at a funeral and sends his apologies. With your agreement, I'm happy to chair the meeting without asking for a vice chair. I don't think the agenda is too onerous, so we will carry on as we are if you're happy with that.
Thank you, Chair. If I may add also, I don't think you mentioned it, Councillor Martin Whale has given his apologies for absence, and Edric Hobbs hasn't been able to join us yet.
I've only got one on my sheet actually, but there we are, written down there, but Martin Whale is above it, and I do apologise for that. Thank you for that, Claire, keeping me on the straight and narrow anyway. Yes, Councillor Martin Whale, that's the only two that I know of. And do you know of any yourself?
Thank you. So I've just read in the chat that Councillor Michael Dunk would like it noted. He is joining us online.
Yeah, that's fine. That's fine. Could I just remind all members that if you do have to send apologies, no matter how late or how early, please send them through the Democratic Services Department to them and not pass on messages to other councillors. It's through the officers, please. Thank you very much. Minutes of the previous meeting, item 2, pages 13 to 16. Is it your wish that I sign those minutes as a true and accurate record of that meeting? Whenever you've got them, I will sign them up. All right, Claire? Okay, thank you very much. 3, declarations of interest. Are there any other declarations of interest from members participating within the room or online? No. Thank you very much. Now, public questions. Now, I have 2 questions from members of the public who are not here. Now, as I'm sure they know, and you know, that members of the public, if they are not at a meeting, I can use my discretion of whether I read out their question or not. Their question is published on the website, and the officer is present and would still give those answers to those questions. But seeing as how it is only 2 questions, if members are happy, I will get Helen, our officer, to read out the questions, and they will be answered by the officer, and we will take it from there. But I say that is not a precedent which I am setting, because if we had half a dozen and they weren't here in the room, it wouldn't happen. So over to you, Helen. If you could read the first question, which is from Dr. Andrew Clegg, please.
Thank you, no problem. As the committee may be aware, I have been studying phosphate flow in the Parrett catchment for over 3 years now. An important element of the study is a weekly monitoring of the phosphate concentration of the Parrett at Chiselborough Bridge. Because the Environment Agency measure the river flow at Chiselborough every 15 minutes, I've been able to convert concentrations into the mass of phosphate passing under the bridge per day. This is known as the phosphate load. I have load recordings going back to May 2023. During the last 8 months, I have seen the baseline phosphate load, the lowest load, decrease from around 40 kilos per day to around 15 kilos per day, a drop of 25 kilos per day, or 14.6 tonnes per year. The only factor that has changed in this period is the outflow from 2 upstream sewage works at Merriott and Crewkerne, both of which had phosphate removal stages installed at the end of last year. Chiselborough is upstream of Martock and South Petherton sewage works, which have both been similarly modified. It is not unreasonable to assume that the 4 together have been responsible for the removal of some 25 to 30 tonnes of phosphate a year from the catchment. A colleague has been monitoring the river further down in Langport, where the EA has recently installed a new trial flow meter, and they have supplied me with data from it. The Langport Parrett also includes the Yeovil, where Yeovil Sewage Works has been similarly modified. We estimate an improvement at Langport of around 40 tonnes per year in phosphate load from sewage outflows. We're pleased to announce that, probably for the first time this century, the Parrett at Langport earlier this year achieved, for a few days, good status on the EA phosphate scale. We anticipate that the future will bring more good records as the legacy phosphate that has built up over decades in the Parrett sediment is gradually washed out. I leave to others to work out what 40 tonnes per year means in terms of permitted house numbers.
For the benefit of those online, a written response will be sent within 5 days. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Firstly, we would like to thank Dr. Clegg for the extensive water quality measurements that he and his colleagues have been undertaking in parts of the River Parrett. And just to follow up in terms of the response, Natural England's current advice regarding upgrades to wastewater treatment works has been that these are measures undertaken to bring the protected sites, in our case, the Somerset Levels and Moors Ramsar sites, back into a favourable condition, rather than for mitigation for new residential development. That is essentially the basis of the nutrient neutrality advice. However, the new phosphate permit limits reduce the phosphate mitigation requirements for new residential development. The Levelling Up and Regeneration Act requirements to upgrade wastewater treatment works to the highest technical achievable limits for nutrient removal, which will come into force by 2030, in nutrient sensitive catchments like ours and the Somerset Levels, will further reduce the level of phosphate mitigation required, but it won't remove it entirely. As members are aware, and we'll deal with it in the agenda item later, the council sought legal advice to clarify the extent to which Wessex Water's investment in wastewater treatment works can be relied upon as mitigation. This legal opinion is available to view on the council's website. It's been published, and the council continues to explore the information from Wessex Water and have approached Natural England for clarification on their position. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much for that, Kate. A full written response will be sent to you within 5 days, Mr. Orr. So enjoy the rest of your holiday. Which is from David Orr. And I do hope you are enjoying your holiday, and the same circumstances will have this question as well. You will get a full written response. Thank you very much. Over to you, Helen.
I first became involved in the issue of nutrient neutrality in March 2023. I can say without hesitation that it is the most complex policy area I have ever encountered. I am grateful to Councillor Hobhouse for the 3-month boot camp in chemistry and nutrient neutrality, an experience that was, frankly, tougher than conscription. As someone who supported remaining in the EU, I believe that Brexit should have allowed us the flexibility to avoid the automatic carryover of this arcane and counterproductive piece of legislation. Applied to the letter, the nutrient neutrality policy achieves the remarkable feat of inflicting massive economic and social harm across Somerset, while almost completely ignoring the real environmental condition of the Somerset levels and moors. It is a prime example of rules for the sake of rules. At last, this council, as the competent authority, has reached a point of common sense. We are now recognising and accounting for the significant phosphorus reduction improvements delivered by Wessex Water, improvements that have been funded through the rising water bills paid by all of us. This pragmatic approach should finally allow much needed housing to progress, while we concentrate our efforts on the real challenge, improving the ecological condition of the Somerset levels and moors. I would like to pay particular tribute to Councillor Hobhouse and Dr. Andrew Clegg for their many years of perseverance and expertise on this issue, and to Executive Councillor Mike Rigby, who has made achieving a practical solution one of his personal priorities. That said, this has not been a policy area where the Council or its predecessor authorities has consistently demonstrated grip or leadership. Those few who raised legitimate questions about the rationale of the approach were not always treated with the courtesy and respect they deserved. When the initial King's Council opinion appeared to support maintaining the status quo, an undocumented meeting led to a serious misunderstanding. The claim that the population growth headroom allocated by Wessex Water had been fully used up. Those data were later shown to be inaccurate. This error delayed resolution for months and caused continuing harm. It was only through Councillor Hobhouse's persistence and his securing of £12,000 in private funding towards a second legal opinion based on accurate Wessex Water data that this council is now in a position to move forward. Does this council need to become more questioning of received wisdom and braver in its leadership decisions? Yes, I believe it does. If we are serious about restoring the levels and moors, we must direct funding toward research and development, particularly to support farmers in managing their land sustainably while maintaining viable livelihoods. I therefore urge that the Council protects what remains of the £9.6 million phosphorus credit grant, and with our MPs, ask the government whether it can now be repurposed to projects that actually remove phosphorus from the Somerset levels and moors.
Thank you for that, Helen. Kate, would you like to read out your response?
Yeah.
Orr's question.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, again, we would like to thank Mr. Orr for his keen interest in the nutrient neutrality matter and for the water quality issues that are facing Somerset. However, I would like to emphasise that the question implies that the matter is resolved, and this is not the case. And again, be more clearly explained when we go through the update report. And again, I would like to emphasise that nutrient neutrality is not a policy. It is the advice of the statutory body responsible for these protection areas. So it's advice from Natural England based on case law to date. Just to follow up, the legal opinion that Mr. Orr refers to has been published on the council's website and can be accessed. I've put a link into the response. Officers has been working with the lead member for economic development, planning and assets, Councillor Rigby, collating the evidence required. And I would urge members, if you haven't already read the legal opinion, please do so, because you'll see how the complexity of the issue and the things that need clarifying. And in particular, paragraph 11 kind of clearly sets out what we need to be addressing in that legal opinion. Natural England's advice regarding upgrades to wastewater treatment works has been that these are measures undertaken to bring protected sites back into a favourable condition rather than mitigation for new residential development. The council, as explained, been testing this position with Natural England and have written to them using the information and the data provided by Wessex Water. In the meantime, it remains necessary for impacted developments to demonstrate nutrient neutrality, as is the case for the other 70 local authority areas that are impacted by exactly the same matters, and to secure phosphate mitigation in order to secure planning permission. So at the current time, the local nutrient mitigation funding is being utilised in line with the government grant conditions to increase the supply of phosphate mitigation and credits available. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Kate. And you will be getting your written response within the specified time, Mr. Orr. And thank you very much, both of you gentlemen, for your questions. Just to clarify to the officer, that was the only 2 questions which is submitted. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you. Right, we will move on then to item 5. The quarterly report on planning service performance, 1610-25, pages 17 to 58, and 2 officers, and I believe it will be Alison who takes the lead on this one, supported by Helen, unless I've got that the wrong way round. So I will hand straight over to Alison.
Thank you very much, Chair. Members, this is the quarterly report that we provide on planning services performance. And just to remind you, it's the quarter up until the end of June. There is always a time lag between bringing this report to you because of when the statistics are published by government, and they were only published in September. So a lot of the material that I'll be going through now is only information up until the end of June. Now, I know members will be very interested to hear what's happened in terms of our prioritising decisions period, and I will cover that to some extent, although of course we haven't got all the data on that through yet. Next slide. So as I've just said, this sets out the performance information which we've been providing on a quarterly basis since vesting day, in line with the Council's constitution and our adopted performance indicators. And I will just draw your attention to the fact that we have now got established corporate performance indicators, and I will go back to those later. They are set out both in the covering report and the appendix, and those are also now reported quarterly. The report and the appendices also includes information on the volume of work which we've received by each of the area teams and the waste and minerals team, and as I've said, reports the information which is published nationally. So the more detailed data is available in the appendices, and what I'm going to run through now is really just the high level information and also some of the actions that we've been taking to reduce the work in progress.
Could I ask where appropriate you could say page numbers for members and anyone online, and especially the press who are present here, so they will get things right as well. Thank you.
I will try to do that. Obviously, I haven't got the report up in front of me, so maybe Helen can identify the page numbers. Okay, thank you, Helen. So I'm going to go through the planning applications that we've received by area from the Q4 2021-22 up until, as I say, the Q1 of 2025-26, which takes us to June. And then look at the national targets that have been set, run through the volume of pre-application inquiries received, information about appeals, and some information around enforcement. So this slide just sets out the number of applications that we've received by area team, and shows the fact that it's pretty volatile, but as you can see, it's reducing. Now this slide 4 to 6 is contained, and the more detailed information is contained in section 8 of the report on pages 19 and 20 of the agenda. So this slide just looks at the number of planning applications received, closed and on hand, and this is the total number of applications across the whole of the authority, so it's not by area. And you can see from this that the number of applications on hand, which is that top line, has been decreasing steadily. And in the last few months and the information here is up until the end of September in terms of the numbers of applications on hand. You'll see that from the beginning of the prioritising decisions period, we've reduced from about 1,600 applications to 1,300 applications. So that is a reduction of about 300 applications and represents a 20% reduction. So the work that the teams have undertaken during that period in terms of trying to prioritise decisions above everything else has been very successful in terms of reducing the number of applications on hand. And from the Monday next week, we will be changing our approach. There will be information on the website about the approach following the prioritising decisions period, and there will be information going out to applicants and agents about that approach going forward. Obviously, we will be taking off the standardised email. We will be returning to more normal provision of service, but with some differences, and particularly we are going to publish some guidance on when we will consider amendments to planning applications. Again, that will be on the website and will be advised to all applicants and agents. But the idea is to try and ensure that we continue to reduce the number of cases on hand, because ideally we would get to a point where the number of cases on hand is approximately equal to the number of cases that are received in any specific period.
Do you want to finish your report before you take any questions, or do you want to finish your section and take any questions on that?
I'm in your hands, Chair. I'm happy to either way.
Right, Matt, was it on that? What?
It's contextual, yes.
What? If you would
Oh,
like to
thank you,
ask your
Chair.
question then.
Apologies, context. Could you just confirm what on hand means in this context, please?
That means the number of applications that are live in the system at any one time. And it's important to point out that this information is based on those applications which are reported nationally through the quarterly returns that we have to provide to government. So it doesn't include all the applications that we have. So things like discharge of conditions, for example, are not counted in this number.
Thank you. Just to confirm, it doesn't necessarily mean all the applications. It's just applications that have been received and are being processed. There are some exemptions.
It's all the applications that are in the system that are included in the government returns. Now, the government returns, quarterly returns, only monitor certain types of applications. So prior approvals, discharge of conditions, and a number of other types of applications are not included in those returns. So those will also be in the system, but they weren't being counted in these numbers.
Fine, thank you.
Councillor Han, on the same
Yeah, on this graph that's on the, do you, Alison, explain why in 22-23 the figures were nearly double what they are now? So if they were that bad then, why are we in such trouble now?
I think we've been in trouble for a while, and what we're trying to do is make sure that we get out of that constant cycle of having so much volume in the system that we're getting a lot of failure demand. So we're getting an increasing number of inquiries from members, but also from applicants chasing, and that clogs up the system. We also, back in 2022-23, had the legacy whereby phosphate applications that required mitigation were being held. We're now in a position, and Kate will explain later in the report, where we have now got mitigation measures and credits available in all the catchment areas, so that that is no longer an issue which is holding up planning applications.
Right, Phil, as Alison said, she's only reporting where we are at this moment. There is more information coming through all the time. Is that correct, Alison?
Yeah, we are currently doing the return. Well, we need to do the returns to government for Q2 by the end of this month, and then they will be published shortly afterwards. We will intend to bring a report on Q2 performance to the December meeting.
Okay, Phil. Okay, Alison, if you'd like to continue.
Sorry. This just, it shows the overall performance of the teams compared to the targets which are set nationally. And the targets which are set nationally are set out on the left-hand side of that slide. And you'll see that overall that we are currently meeting all of the national targets and have been and doing so. Now, I mentioned, and this is set out in section 7 on pages 18 and 19, I mentioned earlier that we have established now a bigger suite of performance indicators which are reported to the performance committee on a quarterly basis, and these are the indicators are set out there, and you'll see from that the targets that are set nationally are all showing as green, as are the performance against the quality of a performance indicator. So the government, as well as setting out national targets to meet for different types of applications, also monitor the quality of performance of local planning authorities, and they do that in two ways in terms of how many decisions have been made over a rolling period which are overturned at appeal. So they monitor both the major and the minor and other applications in terms of that, and also the speed of decision making. And you'll see that in terms of the performance that's reported nationally, we are meeting all of those targets. The one indicator which is showing as red is the one that I've just basically shown you on that previous slide in terms of the work on hand. So that's a new indicator to try and help us understand to what extent we are having the number of applications determined the same as the number received. So we are keeping track of the work on hand. The idea would be to get it down so that the number of applications received in any quarter is approximately equal to the number of cases on hand. And you'll see at the moment, and that this is the information, I would just stress, up until the end of June, because we haven't yet included in this report the information up until the end of September. As I said, we've only just got those figures. So that is really where we are in terms of work on hand. If we go on just to talk about pre-application inquiries, you can see obviously the work on hand does not include all of the pre-application inquiries that are received by the teams, and this just shows you the volume of applications that have been received. And actually, this slide only shows up to the end of Q4 of 2024-25. But I think in your report, you should see in the appendix the up-to-date information for quarter one. Again, this just is monitoring the decisions, appeal decisions that have been made. Again, this is historic information, but just shows you the volume of applications that we received. We're currently doing a piece of analysis to understand the reasons behind decisions which are being overturned, particularly since the changes to the National Planning Policy framework, which were introduced in December last year, and put a greater emphasis on meeting, well, if you haven't got a 5-year housing land supply, giving more emphasis and support to those applications. So we will be providing some more information around that. The next slide is just around enforcement and looks at number of cases that are coming through the system. You will see that the number has risen. That's partly as a result of the pressure to get out planning applications, but also because we've been prioritising the high priority cases, the ones that are going through court proceedings or having notices served on them, and they obviously take up a lot of resource. We're also in a situation where we aren't fully staffed in the enforcement team, and in order to have agency people cover the vacant posts, we've had to keep some posts vacant to meet the financial requirements of the council. So I've mentioned to some extent already the prioritising decisions period. That's what PDP stands for. Has been operating for 12 weeks from 27th of July. And finishes on tomorrow. So that data for that period will largely be reported in the December report. As part of prioritising decisions, we've brought in additional staff, and we've been focusing on recruiting and retaining permanent staff. We've just been out to advert for all the vacant posts within the Development Management Service, and interviews are taking place this week and next week. So we hope to be in a position to offer some posts. We're also using a talent spotter service to try and help us fill the vacant posts. We know there's a national shortage, and there are significant difficulties in recruiting particularly senior and principal level staff. So we are trying to use those mechanisms, as well as securing staff through the public practice scheme, which is also a scheme funded by government. And that has enabled us particularly to bring in people from the private sector with built environment skills and experience. And we have got one additional member of staff joining from that route in the next few weeks. We've already got a couple of staff that we've had through public practice. And we've also been using the Pathways to Planning scheme, and 3 graduates started through that scheme in September. And we're hoping the next round has just been advertised, so we will be looking to see whether or not we can fill. But of course, those people come in at the bottom end, and so we do need the senior and principal staff. I'll just finish. I know Councillor Coles, I can see you angry to make a question. I'll just finish. I think this is the last slide, so I'll just finish. And we're also seeking to increase productivity by removing some of the blockages and putting efficiency measures in place, and obviously working with colleagues across the council, particularly our statutory consultees in ecology, the Lead Local Flood Authority and highways, to try and make sure that we get those comments through in a timely fashion. And we have had some success in that, and we know there's more that we need to do. And we now know that all the legal, the applications requiring legal agreements are now all out to solicitors. When those filter through, some 200 plus applications are awaiting legal agreement. When they filter through, I think you'll see our numbers on hand will be falling considerably as well as a result of that. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Alison. Simon,
Thank you, Chair.
sorry to keep you sat there.
Thank you. Just it's a comment rather than anything else. I remain concerned about the dearth of senior planners and the cost of that we are obliged to pay to fill those gaps. And I can't for the life of me understand why we are paying agency staff to work 3 days a week, and it's costing us more than it would to have permanent staff. It seems to me that that's a false economy. I appreciate that we have to get through the work, but by the same token, going through the work at the most expensive way possible is not conducive to getting on top of everything. And I remain concerned that we need to look very seriously about the terms and conditions. I know there has been talk of a pay and terms and conditions review, but we're yet to see that. And the figure you've just quoted, Alison, 200 waiting for the lawyers to agree. This is an unsustainable position. We need to find a better way of progressing the applications we have. It's not helped by the government changing the rules again and saying that we've got to have however many extra thousand it is homes, without the staff to facilitate that, whilst they maintain the same criteria for our key performance indicators of 8 and 13 weeks. We're having both hands tied behind our backs and told that we're not pedaling fast enough. We need to find a way of breaking this logjam before it becomes really, really serious and we have unwanted and unrequired development in all the wrong places for all the wrong reasons and no mitigation. I mean, we've got 11,000 homes waiting for planning permission in Somerset across the piece. We've got to get on with it. I would be interested to know. I hear the work going on, but I'm really concerned that we're not getting there fast enough, Alison.
Yeah, I think what you've said has been reiterated in the past as well, hasn't it, Simon? And I think there's a slight improvement, but nowhere near enough. So the next lot of figures which do come out in December are going to be interesting, because I would think that we need to see some sort of marked improvement. But we have been saying about the costs and the cost of delivering planning, and it's with staffing levels and everything else. I haven't got the answer. I don't think any of us in this room has got the answer. We just cannot seem to get the staff here. Well, that's good, but perhaps you'll have to start an agency. So no, but it is not an easy task. And some of us have been saying this, why have we been paying out for staff? But we're told it's the same across the board. But as you've said, it was a statement you've made, which is expressing the concerns, and it's the concerns of many of us, I believe, going forward. And I don't think the officers at this moment can say any more than what they're saying. The 3 months, when is the 3 months up for this emergency? I will call it the emergency planning.
So the 3 months is up tomorrow, as I've just described. I think we have made significant progress. So to see a 20% drop in the number of applications on hand up until the end of September, and that's not the end of the period, and there is always a time lag with things, is, I consider, significant progress. So I would argue that we have made significant progress, and you can see from the trend from 2022 that the numbers of applications have consistently been falling. So we have been taking measures to get into a stable set state. In terms of what you've said about the cost of senior planners, yes, it's a problem across the country, though. It's not just a problem here in Somerset. There is a shortage. When the government closed in 2010, many of the planning schools, that meant that we've got a period of time when people were not graduating in planning, and therefore there is a shortage of people with that skill set across the country. We have, though, put in, and as part of the latest recruitment drive, we have put in place recruitment allowances. We do believe that we are now offering competitive salary compared to other local authorities. However, we are also competing against the private sector. And I know from speaking to the talent spotter this morning that she's been approaching a lot of people in the private sector and they do not want to move into the public sector. And that can be for a whole range of reasons. But obviously, you know, the news that the public sector is under pressure financially means that they don't see it as a secure and sensible move at this time.
I did give you a lot of leeway with making your statement, unless it's, and just briefly to the point. Simon.
Very briefly and to the point, which is I'm not suggesting we're not making progress. What concerns me is how we overcome the issues, because you know we obviously have to do that. I'm not suggesting we're not making progress. I can see that.
I think those last few words, overcoming it. Matt.
Thank you, Chair. I will be as quick as I can, I promise you. Thank you, Alison, for that presentation. Regarding PDP, I've got a number of points, but I will rattle through them. Regarding the PDP project, are we able to confidently say that it has been a success before we see the figures? Can we say it's been a success? And if so, is there an accessible metric that we can use to demonstrate this without going into the complex charts and graphs, something that we can feed to the public and say, this is why we've done this thing and this is the success we got out of it?
So I think we can. As I've just described, we have reduced the number of applications on hand, and this is only figures up to the end of September, so it's not the whole of the period, by 20%. So I can say that it has been successful in reducing the workload.
Okay, thank you. That's comforting and encouraging. Well, I'll go to point 4 first. Point 4 is, can we please have slide numbers on the slides so we got a reference point?
I'm sure we can.
I can certainly try. They were on the slide deck. They didn't come through on the presentation. I'll try and fix that for next time.
Lovely, thank you. And now back to the previous point, which was one of the slides up there. I looked for a number but couldn't see it. One of them has got a big spike for South Somerset. Is that all Yeovil?
I think the spike was on pre-application inquiries. Now, South Somerset or South area traditionally has always had the largest number of planning applications. So you'd expect with that, the largest number of pre-application inquiries.
Okay, it's just a consequence.
So it's not just purely Yeovil.
That's a good point, well taken, and one that I constantly say up the rurals. I wanted to echo Simon's comments on agency staff. We all feel very strongly about it, and we all know on both sides of the chamber how we would fix it, I think. Is there an update on the salary matrix for planning staff that again is publicly available? I know that this has been spoken about for a number of months now, but we know that it's a market economy, and I just feel, again, echoing Simon's comments, Councillor Cole's comments, that we've got to be bold here. It is a market economy, and if we need to pay more, we're going to have to pay more to blow the competition out the water. If Devon and Cornwall and whoever else are snatching the people because they're paying more money, we're going to have to pay more money. I keep saying this over and over again, so does everybody in this room. I feel we're going to have to be bold. And as regards the security comment from people not wanting to come from the private sector to the public because security, the public sector isn't going away. We're not going to stop doing planning applications because there's some funding problem. So I do feel we just need to be be more bold with this. We can't be conservative, small c conservative in this aspect. And I'm sure people would agree with me. That's all. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for that, Matt. I think before Alison comes in, what you've been saying about staffing, we've been saying for, I will say yonks. It's just my terminology, a long time. And we seem to be getting fed down the same story about staff. They won't come here. We're not paying enough. It's not a stable enough economy, Somerset and everything else. But we want, like you said, we need to start seeing some evidence of what has been tried and what has been offered. And I'm not sure, I don't think it's the remit of this committee to pursue that. It is other levels. And at this, I don't know if officers here can tell me where it should be pursued or where it is being pursued, but it certainly isn't being pursued here.
So I just comment a couple of things. We have got recruitment allowances in place for all levels of development management staff. Happy to share those with you. They've been out to public advertisement with those recruitment allowances. Unfortunately, recruitment allowances are just a sticking plaster because they're only for up to 3 years. They're reviewed annually, and they also don't necessarily enable people to get mortgages on the back of the additional money. So although, you know, for many people it's obviously and particularly for existing staff, it's a benefit. It's not necessarily enough of an enticement to come for people not, you know, needing to move here and need to move house, etc. The Talent Spotter has been in touch with over 300 people in the geographical area to try and encourage applications and recruits. So we are doing, and that's a mixture of approaching people who are working for local authorities and the private sector. And, you know, that's some of the feedback that we're getting is that, you know, the recruitment allowances aren't sufficient to entice them to apply.
I've got 2 more speakers and then I'm going to wrap this one up. All right, so the first one will be Barry, Councillor Clark.
Thank you, Chair. There's certainly a lot of data there, Chair, in those charts. I mean, it sounds a bit like paralysis by analysis. We've analysed ourselves to death.
Ask all phones are switched off, please, on silent. Sorry to highlight you, Henry, but your light's flashing so we can just see it. Thank you. Sorry, Barry.
Having listened to the analysis, and head of planning said that the actual 12 weeks finishes tomorrow on the emergency planning procedures, I actually was going to allow you to the 28th because I thought it was 3 months. Can I now go with 100% confidence back to the people, some of who have had applications in for over a year with no response, no courtesy of reply in quite a lot of instances? Can I go back to them now and say that we're back to normal and those applications will now be looked at as normal applications? They will be taken out from the cupboard and looked at as current applications.
Alison, can you answer that one for Barry? Simon?
The officers have been trying to reduce all of the backlog of applications, including the ones that have been there for a year. The reason why they're there is a myriad of reasons, and I've seen during this period a large number of inquiries and complaints that have come through to me, and it's a complex picture. So I think if you have specific applications that you are concerned about, continue to raise those, and I'd ask you to continue to raise those through the central email box that we've put in place, because then we can monitor and make sure you get a response. We won't necessarily be doing things in date order. We will be trying to get out decisions as quickly as possible after consultation period ends, and that's dependent on a number of things, partly the internal consultee comments, whether there are any outstanding issues on the application that need to be dealt with, and so on. And as you've heard, a lot of the hold-ups now are, now that all the Section 106s are allocated to lawyers, there is still a period of to and froing. And of course, the planning decision doesn't go out until the Section 106 is completed.
So in other words, you're saying now the hold up is becoming, it's moved down the line to legal.
Part of the hold up. It's not the whole, and as I say, each application, there are different reasons why it may be that a decision hasn't been issued.
Watch this space.
If I may, Chair, through you, Chair, I would ask the head of planning if I can detail her the specific problem that we have with an application that's been going on for a year with a lot of obfuscation and a lot of strange replies to queries that have come back when we've managed to get an answer. So if I may, Alison, I'd like to send you that.
That's fine. If you could send it to the generic emailer box, then it will be tracked. I copy it to me as well. That's fine.
Okay.
But we're trying to put all of the inquiries that we get onto the iCase system so they can be properly managed and tracked, and we can make sure that replies are sent.
Thank you, Barry. Councillor.
Thank you, Chair. Through you. Staffing issues, is there a specific sort of flow? I mean, I refer to Area South really more so than anything else that I would obviously be aware of. But I've had various residents contact me over the last few months saying they've been trying to get hold of a planning officer and can't get a response. And they're primarily not necessarily applicants. They could be neighbours up the road for a planning application. They try to send emails through, just not getting responses. Is that a major issue with the shortage in that area maybe, or what? Thank you.
It was a decision taken as part of the prioritising decisions period that we would try and free up case officer time, and by them not responding to every comment and inquiry that came into their inbox. So there was a generic email that went out. That will stop from Monday. We still obviously receiving comments from neighbours and consultees, which go through onto the planning portal and put on the website as normal, and they will be taken into account as normal. If there's a specific issue that they've got, then please do raise them, as I said, through to Councillor Clark, through an inquiry to the generic inbox.
But the problem is that's where they don't get the responses from. How I understand it, correct? Yeah.
Well, with the volume of work reducing, we are hoping that there will be an opportunity for case officers to have more regular contact with applicants and agents through the life of the application.
Right. Okay. Right. Fellow councillors, this report, we are asked to note the report, which I think we can say we have done, but I think we also have to really, with your approval, state that we do note the slight improvement in the numbers which are coming down, but there is still a long way to go for the planning service to be satisfactory, and we have serious concerns whether the staffing levels are adequate enough to cope with these moving forward. Is that a quick sort of surmise of the situation? Or, I mean, I don't know the answer with the staffing levels until we get the facts and the figures come through, but we've been saying this for a long time, for months, and well, the best part of 12 months and 18 months now, that we need to do something about increasing our levels. And it is showing slight signs, but it's got to be maintained and accelerated. I mean, I'm open to yourselves. Is that, yeah, and Gwill, and that's it. And I don't want long statements, just short and to the point, please, because you've had your chance to ask questions.
Thank you. I absolutely agree with what you said, and I think that we would all agree with the statement. We're all going to look forward to the new set of results in December that we can compare directly to these sets of results. We can put them side by side, and then we'll get our answers. Which is, but I do, while we're in the open forum, I do also want to thank Alison for the work that she's put into this. We know it's tough, and I wouldn't want to do it. Unfortunately, it's our job to scrutinise and dig the stick in every now and again. But we do recognise what you're doing. But this next set of reports is going to be interesting. Thank you.
And I'm glad you've reiterated that. Having that comparison side by side is the important issue. It's all right to come up with all the things which we think we should be doing, but it doesn't always staff to be able to do it. Yeah. Will,
Yeah.
sorry to interrupt you.
No, that's all right. It's just in relation to the comments that you made in your summing up, and I wholeheartedly agree with it. And I think the important thing is that message goes to the right level who make the decisions. And I suspect if the decisions on this were down to the head of planning, then we wouldn't perhaps be in this problem at the moment. So I think it's quite important that we direct our comments from this committee, and I hope they're all unanimously supported, to someone like the executive or the lead member, in order to express our concern about this continuing problem.
Could I just clarify that? Is that every member's view around this table this afternoon? Silence. So you're not satisfied with that response moving forward? Sorry? Simon?
Through you, Chair, thank you. I was vaguely surprised that the lead member's not here. I assumed he was invited to this meeting. And if not, can we make sure he's invited to the December meeting when we've got the two comparators? But as to the comments, I like to think we're in agreement around the table on this, but rests with other people, not me.
Cannot answer for the lead member, but it would be nice to have a response.
Can we invite him to the next one?
Somebody answer that one, please, officer wise. Helen,
Yes.
Alison,
Yes, of course.
and
of
legal.
course.
It's important because it looks as though things are now moving aside from some of the planning decisions to legal now. And I mean, I don't want it to come back in a month or 2 months' time, and then we suddenly find our legals in the same position with their staffing levels and everything else. So can we start working ahead and looking? I don't know whether it will work doing that, but we've got to do something. Okay, right. Thank you for your time on that one. I think we've expressed our concerns, and really, I hope that it is taken up. And I cannot answer for the lead member. I would have thought the lead member would have been at all of the meetings where there are certain aspects of staffing levels and everything, because it's not just one area which is affected, it is the whole county, basically, the whole Somerset Authority. Thank you. Right, we move on then to item 6, pages 59 to 138, and that's the phosphate progress report and local nutrient mitigation fund update, pages, as I just said, 59 to 138. And we've got two officers, got Kate and we've got Paul, Kate Murdoch and Paul Browning. I don't know which one of you.
I'll be taking the lead, Chair.
Right, over to you then, Paul. Welcome.
Thank you very much, all. Thank you, Chair. Purpose of this committee report is to provide members with an update of recent work that's been undertaken in relation to phosphate with regard to nutrient neutrality in the Somerset Levels and Moors, but also give an update on the River Axe Special Area of Conservation. Members will recall that parts of Somerset feed into the River Axe that goes into East Devon that flows southwards. We're also given an update in terms of recent government announcements and changes to legislation in relation to nutrient neutrality. But also then I'll hand over to Kate to provide an update on where we are in the local nutrient mitigation fund and the council's award of 9.6 million. As you're aware, this was from central government, and that was to increase the supply of phosphate mitigation to unlock impacted developments. In terms of background, just to remind this committee, we were previously advised that on August 2020, all local planning authorities in Somerset and Dorset received an advice note from Natural England concerning the unacceptable levels of phosphates in the Somerset Levels and Moors Ramsar site. Since then, a large proportion of new development, particularly housing, has been affected in the impacted areas, and the impacted areas, as you will recall, are the River Tone, Parrett and Brew River catchment areas. And in those localities, new developments impacted needs to demonstrate nutrient neutrality. We have given further advice on that matter, and there's a web link there for members if they so wish to look at it. In terms of an update of where we are across Somerset, progress to date, first of all, the phosphate calculator. As set out in March committee reports of this, members will recall that the latest version of our calculator, version 3, was launched in November 2024. We've now made it online. All of the information now and data sets are all publicly available and scrutinised. To those ends, there are a number of minor clarifications and amendments, but since then, there have been no significant changes. Since summer 24, voluntary stretch permits have operated in affected river catchment areas, i.e. the Brew, the Parrett and the Tone. They are at Taunton, Wells and Langport wastewater treatment works. Members will recall that stretch permits reflect the fact that we know that a number of wastewater treatment works, these in particular, are operating well within their limits. So in other words, whilst the limit may be 0.8 or 0.9 milligrams per litre, they're operating around about 0.7 or even lower. To those ends, these operating capacities, the limits they're working to, are actually incorporated within the calculator. That means that the overall levels of mitigation are therefore lower in those localities compared to the permit limits. To those ends, the monitoring data by Wessex Water has shown that Taunton and Wells are performing robustly and well within those stretched limits. For Langport, there was a one-off dip. However, that didn't warrant the removal of the permit regime, stretch permit regime at this time. We've had no new wastewater treatment works to the stretch permit regime at this stage. These matters have been captured in a memorandum of understanding. That memorandum of understanding is enclosed as Appendix 2, and it is also signed by Wessex Water and, more importantly, Natural England. So it's got Natural England support. In terms of legal updates, Jurston Farm. Members will recall that this has become what we call a national test case in terms of nutrient neutrality. The planning appeal in August 2022 was dismissed regarding the operation of the Habitats Regs assessment regulations in June 2023. The Court of Appeal handed down their judgment in June 2024, dismissing all 3 grounds of appeal, and there is a web link there should members wish to look at it further. This confirmed the Council's position that Regulation 63 of the Conservation and Habitat Species Regulations applies to determination of reserve matters, approvals, discharges of planning conditions, even if those conditions do not relate to a drainage matter. The Supreme Court considered this matter in February 2025. We are still waiting the judgment. We have got no firm date as to when the judgment will be made. Joint King Council's opinion, the current situation. In March, this committee was informed about the receipt of the Joint King's Council's opinion. It sought to clarify the extent to which Wessex Water's investment in wastewater treatment work upgrades can be relied as mitigation for the purpose of undertaking the appropriate assessment under the Habitats regulations. The legal opinion has been published as promised on our council website. There are further details within the committee report in terms of the web link to it. Since March 2025, Office has been working through the next steps with the lead member for Economic Development Planning and Assets, collating the evidence required as advised by the opinion. You recall my colleague Kate outlined that and made reference to paragraph 11 of the legal opinion when responding to David Orr's in public question time. The Executive Director wrote to Wessex Water on the 11th of August. That is closed at Appendix 3, and I apologise I haven't put page numbers here, but I will endeavour to do so next time we do have a presentation. Wessex Water responded with Appendix 4. The information and the data supplied by Wessex Water in Appendix 4 has now been forwarded to Natural England, with the supporting information seeking further advice from them. That is enclosed as Appendix 5. We are currently awaiting a response from Natural England. In the meantime, it remains necessary for impacted developments to demonstrate nutrient neutrality and secure the required phosphate mitigation in order to secure planning permissions in the affected river catchment areas. Moving on, third-party phosphate credit schemes. Members will recall that we have previously signposted those third-party phosphate mitigation schemes to our council website. We've got the link there. Those schemes there, we know are legitimate schemes, that there are legal agreements that the council have signed up to, along with the developer and prospective supplier of these P credits. To those ends, there are further information there in terms of templates and other information about the supply of P credits from third-party providers. The council is also aware, as you know, there are various strategic residential developments where the developers are working to progress their own phosphate mitigation solutions to submit their own and facilitate their own developments. There are a number around Taunton, but there are a number elsewhere, for example, Wellington, etc. Members are aware that the Somerset Council is in a situation where we are prioritising decision period to help improve the service levels in planning service. That was the discussion we had at the previous item, so I'm not going to go any further on that matter. All I will say is, since the July period, the phosphate team, that's 1.6 full-time equivalents, have been assisting on the ecology service on phosphate consultations in Area South. Historically, we have only done consultations for various reasons in Area West. So to those ends, we've taken on extra responsibilities in addition to what we normally do. Pre-commencement conditions. In terms of the council's constitution, this was delegated to the Chief Planning Officer to introduce and implement pre-commencement conditions by the end of 2025. The council is satisfied that mitigation and overall credits available in the catchment areas are sufficient to move to the situation. To those ends, we'll be giving more details at the Agents Forum meeting on the 6th of November 2025. Moving on to catchment area updates. In terms of this committee, they will recall that only a small part of Area North, i.e. former Sedgemoor District Council area, is subject to nutrient neutrality advice. The reason for that is a vast majority of the new development is downstream of the river of the Ramsar site, the Somerset Levels and Moors. So the need for nutrient neutrality is therefore not having a significant impact or wider ranging impact on delivering a new development in that area compared to other areas across Somerset. For example, in Area West, predominantly the former Torrington Borough Council area and a small part of area of West Somerset is affected. South Somerset, virtually all of it. Similarly, in terms of the Brew, Mendip, vast majority, except for the far areas over in the Froome locality. For the period from April 2021 to the 31st of March 2025, 5,747 dwellings have been permitted within the Somerset Levels and Moors catchment area, i.e. the 3 affected river catchment areas. In terms of nutrient supply and 5-year mitigation requirement information, we've submitted all that information within Appendix 1 of our committee report. In terms of phosphate availability to mitigate, that would be approximately 2,900 dwellings at 2 milligrams per litre. Or if you're at 1 milligram per litre, it doubles effectively to 5,800. As I said, there are more information within the appendix explaining that more in detail. In terms of the River Axe catchment area, the lead authority for nutrient neutrality, as I've previously advised, is East Devon District Council. East Devon District Council were successful in their local nutrient mitigation fund bid round 2, and they were awarded just over 4 million, 4.09 million. Further details are on the government website. I provided the link there in the presentation. The link is also in the committee report. East Devon governance arrangements are closed as Appendix 6 within our officer report. Officers from Dorset Council and Somerset Council have been invited to the inaugural meeting. The date of that has yet to be confirmed. All we know is it's likely to be in the week commencing the 3rd of November 2025. To those ends, when we see the agenda, clearly there are parts of this, the affected areas in Area South and Area West that could be affected, and we will liaise with members if they're affected. We're talking very much in terms of the Blackdown Hills area and also to the area and the sort of the Tapworth locality to the southwest of Chard. In terms of other matters, moving on now, holistically, the Planning Infrastructure Bill. This committee will recall that in March 2025, the bill was published, and there is a link there within the presentation and also the committee report. The bill has now reached the House of Lords stage, and sittings are scheduled between the 20th and the 29th of October. At the time of drafting this report, there were no standalone amendments had been tabled. However, that situation may have changed over the last few days. And the amendments that were available at the time of drafting the report are enclosed as Appendix 7. They both encompass both phosphate and nitrogen discharge matters. I will now pass over to my colleague Kate to give you an update in terms of where we are in the Local Nutrient Mitigation Fund.
Thank you, Paul. Can I just move you over? Yeah. Okay, so just to give you an update on where we are with the Local Nutrient Mitigation Fund, members will be aware that we were awarded 9.6 million to increase the supply of mitigation schemes and the availability of phosphate credits to help impacted developments. That's the terms on which the grant has been awarded to the council. You considered the revised delivery strategy that we brought to the committee back in March, and that's included with the report as Appendix 8. And this provided the high level kind of project plan that was setting out the key interventions that we were looking to supply to increase both the supply of temporary P credits, and that is to mitigate between now and 2030 when the what we call is the technical achievable limits come into force with the Levelling Up and Regeneration Act that then lowers that requirement. So it's temporary credits are just to bridge that gap between now and post 2030, and then your permanent credits, which are those that are that we'll talk in more detail in terms of the projects that we move forward. Next, Paul. Okay, there seems to be a slight delay between the slides changing on here and changing up on the big screen. But so in terms of the delivery strategy, we had effectively 3 projects. So project 1 was to increase the supply of temporary or bridging credits, one of which was the Miscanthus trial, and there were other measures. But a lot of those projects we are now kind of putting on hold. So we've done the Miscanthus one. There doesn't seem to be a huge requirement for temporary credits nationally. So at the moment, it's just the Miscanthus one that we're taking forward. Project 2, you'll be aware of, was our call for sites. So we did an environmental call for sites, both for phosphate mitigation, but also biodiversity net gain, which is another statutory requirement that's been brought forward as part of the Environment Act. And then project 3 is working with registered social housing providers and our council housing colleagues that work with our council housing and property stock to increase the supply of phosphate credits, mainly through the upgrade of poor performing kind of package treatment plants. Okay, so the Miscanthus trial, we've rolled out planting on some land that the council owns, and at the moment this is providing temporary credits effectively through a fallowing land agreement. It doesn't deliver any additional benefits as such for in terms of the miscanthus grass, other than an alternative income stream rather than leaving the land fallow. We've also commissioned a literature review. We've done this jointly with colleagues in Wessex Water. We commissioned ADAS to undertake that literature review. We'll be considering the draft report and looking to publish that by the end of 2025. What it is effectively considering is all the research that's been done and what the key issues are around miscanthus. There were a number of kind of questions that were raised through that, but we will publish that literature review by the end of this year. We were also looking to explore new technical innovations very much around water saving measures. These are at the moment on hold because colleagues in the housing team are focusing on rolling out the permanent credits through the upgrades to some of the septic tanks. Project 2 is the call for sites, as we've explained. So we've now entered into some number of Section 39 agreements to secure the phosphate credits on a number of land holdings, both in the River Parrett and the River Tone catchment. I think it's fair to say that in the first phase, there weren't any in the River Brue catchment, but at the moment, we have secured those in the River Tone and the River Parrett. So we've now got an expanded supply of council P credits, and we've published on our website the updated cost, which is there for you to see. So the price is significantly reduced down to just over £34,000 for a kilogram of P mitigation. And we have informed agents and developers the new availability of these credits, and we'll be doing some more information on that in the agents forum in November. So project 3, again, there we go, it's come through. We've also been working, as I've explained, with colleagues in the housing team to upgrade some of the septic tanks, not just the housing ones, but also some of the properties owned by the council, former farmhouses, and some children's homes. And that's supplied some additional phosphate credits in, again, the River Tone and the River Parrett. Thanks, Paul. So in terms of conclusion and key messages, as we've explained, planning decisions, they continue to require, where they fall in the affected area, they continue to be required to demonstrate nutrient neutrality. Through the Nutrient Mitigation Fund, we've delivered an increased supply of phosphate credits now in all the river catchments. We're looking to progress some work now to target the River Brue to increase the supply there. But there are credits available from third-party providers in the River Brue. As many members will be aware, developers still have the option to find their own bespoke solutions, and many of our strategic sites are doing that through on-site wetlands or off-site wetlands that they're seeking to deliver, and other measures. So that's also reduce the need for additional phosphate credits for those strategic sites, because many of them are finding their own solutions. As I've explained, the call for sites itself didn't yield many options in the River Brue, and so we are looking to do a procurement exercise to do a strategic scale septic tank upgrade project, primarily focusing potentially in the River Brue. And we will need to take a report through executive to get approval for that, and then through the normal procurement route. As we've explained, that the number of dwellings that have been impacted by nutrient neutrality based on existing local plans, looked at the period between 2020 and 2032. This is where the 18,000 dwelling figure has come from. So as at the 31st of March 2025, we've had 5,747 dwellings permitted, so they have all been able to demonstrate nutrient neutrality in order to get permission. We have increased the supply of nutrient mitigation by supporting third-party credit providers to get legal agreements in place, but also increasing the supply of council credits with the use of local nutrient mitigation fund. This is all outlined in Appendix 1. So what we've now got is sufficient phosphate credits across the whole of Somerset to unlock that range of dwellings that we've outlined there, between just under 3,000 dwellings up to 5,800 dwellings. And of course, members will understand that that depends which wastewater treatment works those developments feed into. So if all of them are feeding into a wastewater treatment works that's operating at 1 milligram, we've got sufficient credits to unlock 5,800 homes. That's essentially what that range means. Members will also be aware that the government, through the new standard methodology that was published in December last year, has significantly increased Somerset's annual housing requirement, which represents a 41% increase overall for Somerset. And we now need to be identifying sites for 3,000, just over 3,700 dwellings per annum. Going forward, of course, we continue to work closely with Dorset Council, that's also impacted by the Somerset Levels and Moors catchment area, and sharing experience and learning with other local planning authorities to address this ongoing challenge. And lastly, we're just asking the Strategic Planning Committee to note the contents of the report in terms of the update, the spend to date that we have undertaken and the projects we've undertaken through the nutrient mitigation funding, in order to provide a further update. We will bring another report to the committee, hopefully in March next year, depending on committee dates. And then just to note the intent that we will be following a procurement exercise for upgrading septic tanks, potentially in the River Brue catchment area, and we'll be taking a report to executive for approval to do that. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Kate, and you, Paul, for those reports. I've got two people that has indicated they want to speak, and I've got you down, Henry, but I will do committee members first. All right. Simon.
Thank you, Chair. A starting point is we know that we have something like 11,000 homes stored since 2020 across the piece. So that equates at somewhere around 2,700, 2,800 affordable homes in that mix as well, and somewhere between 70 and 100 million of 106 and SIL money that we're not getting at or progressing. The government's just stretched our targets by 40-odd%. So, it's getting harder and harder to do this. And I think there's a way forward. I think there's a way forward using the KC's methodology, which is the appropriate assessment methodology. I think we should adopt that. I think we should publish a headland register for the recycling centres, the Tone, the Barrett and the Brue, so that we can show the created, the allocated and the remaining, so we don't have any double counting or anything like that. I think we should agree a statement with Wessex Water, Natural England, the Environment Agency, recognising the work that Wessex Water has done and is busy doing. And I think we should therefore start looking to grant planning permissions and start getting over this backlog that we've got, because otherwise we're always going to be on the back foot forever and a day. And I think we've got to get moving now. I think we need to report this back quarterly in our normal strategic planning committee meetings and showing what the progress is like. I think that's a really, really important piece of work that we should be doing. I think there is a way out of this, and I think that is a way out of this. I'd like to propose that. I don't know if they've got any support anywhere else for this, but I'd like to see it because I think it's really, really important that we start leading from the front and getting these permissions out there. Because the alternative is, with a stretch target of an additional 40% housing delivery requirement, then we are going to have inordinate issues resisting unwanted, undesirable development in the wrong places.
Simon, I haven't made a note of your proposal because I'm sure you have there. But I will ask the officers, is there anything they want to respond to on that before I move on to the next one? And I've got 3 speakers down that want to speak.
Yeah, and I will defer to Leslie if she wants to add anything further from the legal point of view. In terms of the proposal, as explained, officers are working with, have worked with Wessex Water to understand the evidence and have presented that to Natural England. As explained, I would draw members' attention to paragraph 11 in the legal opinion, which very clearly states that there is and what they refer to as an evidential conundrum. And they refer to the fact that Wessex Water have done this stripping, but Natural England see that as a measure to bring the habitat sites back into a favourable condition and not to mitigate additional development. And this is the key issue is it there to mitigate further development, or is it there to bring those conservation sites back into a favourable condition? And that to date has been Natural England's very clear position. It's there to bring those sites back into a favourable condition. Now, as explained, all that information has gone back to Natural England, and we've asked Natural England with the legal opinion to give us their view. But at the current time, we need to wait for that information to come back, and then it will need to be considered as to which member meeting that goes to in terms of consideration. I'm sorry, Simon, I don't know.
Simon?
Can you please keep me in the loop, and can I please attend those meetings?
I think that's a matter for whether or not it's an officer meeting or a member meeting. My understanding is Chris Hall's leading on that. So if you wish to attend, I suggest you speak to him.
Okay, Simon, lovely. Right, as I alluded to, I've got three other speakers. Right, I'm going to go to Henry, and can I ask you to be succinct with what you ask Henry? I've got 2 other committee members that got to speak, but I'm bringing you in now. All right.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to start off. I'm sorry, Kate, I need to correct you. Natural England are not in charge. Our original barrister's opinion is absolutely clear that this council is in charge.
Henry, can I anything? I mean, make a point, but don't blame officers. And I know you're not blaming officers, and you're trying to make a point. But can I just ask you to make it, politely?
3 years ago, Cornwall sent a letter to Natural England pointing out that Bodmin was not in the catchment area of the Camel, and that Natural England then withdrew the nutrient neutrality. Well, they didn't withdraw it. They were told that they weren't going to be put through. We have no data. We have never had any data proving that the river catchments are polluting the levels of moors. Andrew Clegg's data is very much focused on the pollution that is in the river, the rivers around him. Now, we don't know the amount of water that comes out of the rivers in the summer into the levels and moors. We don't know the amount of water that the EA is pumping out of the levels and moors on an annual basis. And we have, I repeat, no data. I would like to go through, for this committee's benefit, them to understand what, if we can go ahead with what the letter that Chris Hall has sent out on the 12th of September, what the benefits to the planning system is. And I start off with the 5,700 houses that have gone through the nutrient neutrality over a 4-year period. I point out that over that 4-year period, we're supposed to have cleared 12,000 houses, and we've cleared 5,700, which is why we do not have a 5-year land supply. The benefits of removing nutrient neutrality in its present form are less negotiation by planning officers when the developers come in to the bring in their plans. Secondly, easier 106 legal deals. I understand that at the moment we have a backlog of 106 legal deals, and I'm very happy to be corrected, of very nearly 6 months, all of which is holding up the planning that you had a briefing on earlier. Less negotiation by the environment officers, in particular in South. An increase in community benefit for all of our divisions. So at the moment, Castle Cary has had £500,000 removed in community benefit to pay for things like mitigation.
Could I ask, have you discussed any of this with the executive member responsible for planning?
I have. Mike Rigby has had access to all of this.
Yeah, well, I mean, well, as you heard with the committee, they've asked for Mike Rigby to be present at the next meeting and what have you. I appreciate that. It's very, you're very knowledgeable and very passionate with what you are saying with everything else, and no member would dispute that. But we are not here to go over and over and over. If you've gone over it with the executive member, when the executive member could have done out a report for this authority with the officers to have been brought to this committee, and I hope that members would agree with me with that, unless they think otherwise. So could I ask you to make your comments succinct? And I know you've got a lot of things which you don't agree with, and just to give the officer a chance to just do a quick précis of an answer there, and for this committee to request the presence of the executive member at the next meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Having gone through the other final thing is you will get budget gains, as Simon's already said, with SIL and council tax money if you increase the amount of houses going through. I've got 3 questions and one thing I'd like to put forward. What is now going to happen to the remainder of the £9.6 million grant if Chris Hall's letter is acted upon and goes through, as he says in his letter, in the next 3 to 6 months? How are we going to prove the conditions on the levels and moors? Over the last 5 years, absolutely nothing has been done to improve that conditions of that important site. And the final thing is, how are we going to put management in place to manage the levels and moors as we have on the Mendips or the Quantocks, where we have landscape management? My final thing to this committee is I ask you please to support what is happening with Chris Hall's letter and look at that we can remove the existing schemes from nutrient neutrality and replace them with a Wessex Water work thing that allows free mitigation to all of the applications, which is what is in hand, hopefully going to happen. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much, Henry. And do the officers want to respond briefly with some of those things? I see Kate is not in there. So I was saying, I will let the officer respond, but I do want it noted and minuted from this committee, because it has been raised from the floor, that we do want the executive member responsible for all of these issues at the next meeting of the this committee. And do I have you, before the officer responds, do I have your support on that? Thank you very much. I do. That was unanimous. Sorry, Kate.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, so just to pick up the questions that Councillor Hobhouse has raised in terms of what is going to happen with the remainder of the 9.6 million grant. So I think at the moment we have to allocate that funding in line with the grant conditions. We can't go against the grant conditions that are set by government. And those are the same grant conditions that apply to other local authorities that have been awarded money to deliver nutrient mitigation schemes. So at the current time, we will continue to apply that money to increase the supply of nutrient mitigation schemes and phosphate credits. If the situation changes, we will of course need to revert to government to understand whether we can repurpose that grant or not. But as the grant conditions currently apply, that is how we're utilising that funding. In terms of how we are going to approve the conditions on the levels and moors, that is probably a question that needs to be posed to a number of different bodies that are responsible for the Somerset levels and moors. The council itself doesn't have a statutory duty to restore the Somerset levels and moors, but obviously we want to be a key partner in any action plan that comes forward. And the current planning and infrastructure bill and the proposals in there around environmental delivery plans and the introduction of what's called a nature restoration fund, which is essentially a tariff approach to enabling developments to come forward in nutrient sensitive catchment areas, will be a key thing that we'll probably want to be involved in to ensure that we understand what actions need to happen to restore the Somerset levels and moors. And then the question in terms of how we are going to put management in place to manage the Somerset levels and moors, again, is directly linked to the response I've just given on environmental delivery plans and the other key partners that have got a much more a statutory duty when it comes to the Somerset levels and moors, which the council doesn't currently have. And in terms of Chris Hall's letter and the legal opinion, Chair, I think we've already answered that question in the report, but we just need to wait to see what the outcome of that is. In line with the legal advice, it does specify that this information needs to be clarified, and we're seeking that clarification from Natural England.
Thank you very much. Does the legal officer want to add anything to that last few words that the officer just stated?
No, I would concur with everything that the officer has stated and say that it would be ill-advised to go ahead until we have the response from Natural England.
Thank you. Thank you both very much. Thank you. All right. All right, King. Right. The three speakers I've got is, and I will take them in this order, is Gwyl, Barry and Phil. And I believe Simon got a question.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, we seem to be in a sort of state.
Sorry. Apologies.
That's all right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We seem to be in a state of flux at the moment, and I was interested. I mean, we wrote to Natural England, or what was it, on the 12th of September, and we haven't had a reply yet. And I do wonder whether that is tied up with the infrastructure bill going through and the budget, because there's a lot of talk in the newspapers about how the Chancellor is going to cut the Gordian knot of environmental regulations that's holding up development. And I would be very surprised, because I used to work for them, if Natural England were not aware of what was going on behind the scenes, and they're holding their reply until something comes a bit clearer. But I think from our perspective, and Henry's absolutely right, we are the competent authority here, but we have to work within the guidance from the statutory regulator, which puts us in, as I say, in a bit of a flux. So I don't know whether, I mean, this is more of a statement rather than a particular question. One thing I have noticed that Appendix 7 is not within the pack, and I would quite like to see it if it's got all the parliamentary amendments in it, because I think it would add to my understanding of which way the wind is blowing. And I make a final point. I also sit on the IDB. Perhaps I should have declared this as an interest. I don't know whether I should have done. As a member of the council, I sit on the Levels and Moors IDB, and I was invited to a meeting.
Suggest you take the guidance from the legal officer.
Yeah. Okay.
I think you need to declare that.
I will declare it as an interest. In relation to that, having worked with the IDB over many years, they of course do control the water levels within the protected sites, and the water levels have to be adjusted seasonally in order to make sure them available for grazing or otherwise. And as part of that, their environment committee, I was invited to a landscape recovery project meeting in Beer last week, which was very interesting. And as has been pointed out by Councillor Hobhouse, there are significant moves around to get all the stakeholders involved in looking at the full-scale landscape recovery of it. One of the big problems, of course, is a lot of the phosphates already embedded and stuck in the mud at the bottom of the ditches. So it will take quite some time to resolve. Anyway, thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there anything an officer wants to respond to with Will's comments or not?
No, the only thing I wanted to flag up, Chair, is that Appendix 7 is on page 76 of the report. It's at the bottom of the report, page 76.
Thank you, Kate. Right, the next one is Barry, Councillor Clark.
Thank you, Chair. Perhaps this is something that Kate could answer for me. On table 5, the expenditure of £9.6 million, 3 million is going out in temporary credits. To who and in what form? And the last one, that's project 1, and project 3, the £1 million expenditure, that is to do up your own small treatment plants that you're responsible for, is it?
So the 3 million, I'm sorry, the 3 million that's allocated in table 5, and sorry, I'm just trying to get the table up now. Whereabouts is it, Paul?
It's in the appendices. Keep on going. That was the original. Keep on going.
Yeah, so this was the table that was considered by the committee back in March 2025, was in the original revised strategy that we brought forward. The 3 million that we've got in temporary bridging credits. What was your question? You wanted to know whether that's still allocated? Yeah. At the moment, that's not going out because we've reviewed the demand for temporary credits and doesn't seem to be a huge demand for temporary credits. So a small element of that has gone out for the miscanthus trial, and a small element went out for the salinity solutions trial. But other than that, there hasn't been anything from that. So we're in the process of looking to reallocate some of that to support additional sites that have come through the call for sites, and the balance we will look to allocate for a strategic scale septic tank upgrade project to increase the supply in the River Brue. Well, it's not there in terms of projects, in terms of doing a strategic scale septic tank upgrade project, because it's something that we've thought about post doing this table, really. Some local authorities are doing that, and we're just taking their learning in terms of doing because we've already got septic tank upgrade providers operating as third-party credit providers in the Somerset Levels and Moors. what we're now looking to do is whether or not we can kind of ramp up what's being delivered through that route and do it on a strategic scale where we're forward funding that to increase the supply, and we're looking at potentially prioritising the River Brue because we didn't get many schemes that came forward in the call for sites.
Okay, and project 3 is doing up your own 20 small sites, I take
Yeah.
it, is it? Okay,
So
thank you.
that's where the council septic tank upgrade projects are undertaken. Yeah.
Right, Barry.
Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Ham, Phil?
Thank you, Chair. Okay, my wife says my hearing's not good, but I'm sure it's good enough.
Pardon?
I heard you mention the word. I thought you mentioned the word River Frome several times earlier. Is that correct? Yeah, River Frome.
River Brue.
Brue.
Yes.
So it was my wife. Anyway, taking on from that, what is the status of the River Frome? Because I live in that part of the world, not on the levels. Because there's hundreds and thousands, thousands of houses being built around Frome villages and South Baines, Bradstock, Midsummer, Norton, Paul, all which feed into the River Frome. We've got no, what is the phosphate levels of that area? Because if there's no mitigation going on, and Wessex Water spillages into the rivers increasing year on, and the figures from 21 to 24, 5 are huge increases. Is anybody checking out? What I'm trying to say is that area going to fall into the same as what the levels have fallen into? We're not careful.
So just to pick up that question, so the river, that river isn't linked to the Somerset levels and
No,
moors.
exactly.
So it doesn't fall within what is called the special protection area. So nutrient sensitive catchments are applied to whether they have a special designation, although so they're a special protection area or a special area of conservation. You're absolutely right. There are rivers all over the country where unacceptable levels of nutrients are being pumped into our rivers from sewage overflows, and the Rivers Trust publishes that data that they obtain through the Environment Agency. Because if a river doesn't have a special protection area status, it won't fall into nutrient neutrality advice. So where you may well be aware of the River Wye and the legal case that's come forward there.
Yeah.
The River Wye, the River Avon are all areas impacted by nutrient neutrality requirements because they have a special area designation. The River Frome does not have that kind of designation. And there's loads of, that's not unique to the River Frome, there's loads of rivers all over the country that don't have that designation, as do the River Parrett, the River Tone and the River Brue. They themselves don't have a special protection designation attached to them. It's because they are hydrologically linked to the Somerset Levels and Moors Ramsar site that they're caught. And it's that hydrological link that effectively means that those wastewater treatment works are upgraded. Of course, there's been many cases where members have made the case that they're not hydrologically linked. And if that transpires that they're not hydrologically linked, you may well find that they don't fall in that special protection area, and those wastewater treatment works might not need to be upgraded to that technically achievable limit. But that is essentially where we are at the moment. So the River Frome is not hydrologically linked to, and it doesn't have a special designation itself. So it doesn't have that same level of protection that areas that are either hydrologically linked or are themselves designated as special protection areas or special areas of conservation.
Okay, that answers all my questions. Bit of a hidden agenda there. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much. Right, Simon.
Thank you, Chair. Through you. We heard earlier in the meeting that something, if I remember correctly, I think the figure was 14.6 tonnes of phosphate had been removed. And I'm just trying to get my head round if 14 odd tons of phosphate has been removed, and is no longer, and because of the mitigation, the additional work that Wessex are doing at their treatment centres, it is removing even more phosphates from that. I'm trying to equate that with house building. I'm struggling a little bit because maybe it's just the idea of 14.6 tons of phosphate as a lump that is fooling me slightly. But I'm wondering how we can take that amount out and an upgrade, a continuing upgrade, removing even more from the current water flows and sewage treatment plants, and that not having an effect and allowing us to grant permission for housing. Because it seems to me that 14 something, I can't remember, I think it was 14.6 tons of phosphate having been removed, would suggest to me 1 gram per litre, I think was the equation for housing. That's an awful lot of houses. Yeah.
Yeah, and this is the crux of the legal opinion, essentially. And again, I would draw members' attention to paragraph 11. So the phosphorus removal that Wessex Water are doing, Natural England are seeing that as a conservation measure to bring the Somerset levels of moors back into a favourable condition. They are not seeing, or their advice is that it's not there to mitigate putting more phosphorus in through additional population through residential development. And paragraph 11 essentially sets that out. If it is there for mitigation, then we can use it. If Natural England are of the view that it's there for the conservation of the Somerset levels of moors, and this is where paragraph 11.2 is very clear. If it just says, I'll read it out, if Natural England is correct, we agree that these works cannot be regarded as mitigation for the purposes of permitting new housing. And then they refer back to other paragraphs above. So that is what we're trying to establish at the moment. So can that, the tons of phosphates that the Wessex Water are removing, can we rely on that as mitigation? Or is it, as Natural England has previously stated, purely there for the conservation and restoration of the Somerset levels of moors that's currently in an unfavourable condition?
Thank you. I understand that as far as it goes. The bit that's causing me the confusion is not that they are taking out and have removed whatever it was, 14 tons. It's the fact that they have increased their removal rate from their various, the brew, the tone, the parrot and the brew. All of those have had an increase in the removal rate of phosphate, which is now far higher than at any other stage, which must mean that they are starting to clear up the rivers because they're removing more and more. And that's the argument that Natural England appear to be using. However, by increasing the amount of phosphate that they take out, that surely has to be seen as a mitigation because they are removing even more than they thought was possible. So that has to give us some headroom, or give the house building industry some headroom. I don't build houses.
So what it does do is reduce the amount of mitigation that developers need to provide. So, and this is where actually it might be beneficial to show these bar charts are in Appendix 1. So what this shows at the moment is what we've got by way of supply of mitigation in each of the river catchments relative to the need, so pre-2030. And the next slide essentially shows that line dropping, and that's because the level of mitigation required drops significantly post 2030 because all of those wastewater treatment works that are hydrologically linked to the Somerset levels of moors will be required when all of those that serve a population over 2,000, I should say, will have a lower phosphate permit limit imposed through the Levelling Up and Regeneration Act. So they will be discharging at 0.25 milligrams per litre. So for every litre of treated effluent that gets pumped into the river, they will not be able to exceed the 0.25 essentially. And because that line drops, it means that developers will be mitigating at that much lower level. So the works that Wessex Water are undertaking are absolutely captured. They're captured through the phosphate calculator, and it reduces the level of mitigation. And as Paul explained in the slides, where we've agreed those stretch permits, that it's lower, even lower still, but it doesn't remove the need for mitigation. And at the moment, based on the way legal advice is there, is that you'll only be able to remove that requirement on the basis of nutrient neutrality advice is when the Somerset Levels or Moors is back in a favourable condition. Now, the Planning and Infrastructure Bill, with the introduction of environmental delivery plans and nature restoration fund, might change that approach, because what they're looking at is effectively paying a tariff. Developers pay a tariff, much like they do with SIL. They can crack on then, that's their mitigation essentially delivered, and strategic scale mitigation projects can then be delivered with that funding. Anything you want to
Following on from that, do we then have a
In one thing, it's being answered, and then you're coming back with something else. Let's. Well, it may be very important, but can I now ask you, in fairness to everyone else, ask what you want to ask, and then ask it all in one, and then the officer will answer it, and that will be it then. I don't want to stifle anyone talking about it because it's important issues, but there's a limit.
the question following on from that, Kate, is there a quantum of phosphate that has to be removed before everybody is happy that the new stretch targets, the new rebuilt, invigorated, whatever you want to call it, sewage treatment plants are then in a position that, you know, we're back into a favourable position? How long do we think that will take, and how much phosphate needs to be removed to achieve that? Because if we've got to the point where the new treatment works are removing sufficient that there is the mitigation, it's no longer an issue, and do you then have that catch-up period to remove the residual phosphate? And I just wondered if we had any idea how long that might take.
Thank you, Simon.
Well, the straightforward answer is that no, I don't think anyone would be able to put a specific time scale on it, because essentially the advice is whilst the Somerset Levels and Moors is in an unfavourable condition, developers will need to continue to supply mitigation and mitigate the impact. Now, in terms of whether there are better solutions, that the government's proposals around environmental delivery plans and the nature restoration fund will be that the view is that it will be an easier solution for developers to utilise that route rather than delivering their own individual mitigation, and then that funding will deliver the mitigation schemes. But in terms of a specific amount that needs to be removed from the wastewater treatment works, they're not going to be able to reach a point of having zero phosphates going into our rivers. That's why they've got this that is the technically achievable limit point. It will be 0.25 milligrams per litre. And then, of course, we've also got a number of combined sewers all over, and this is what Councillor Ham was raising, that are discharging in high rainfall events untreated effluent into our rivers, and that is another big issue that needs addressing. I mean, there's one issue at our wastewater treatment works. There's another whole issue that will need addressing with how we address the problem with untreated effluent being pumped into our rivers, and that is a national issue, not unique to Somerset.
Thank you for that, Kate, and thank you, Simon, for the questions. Now, before I move on, I think we've aired this one enough now. I want to seek some legal advice now, because we've got the recommendations in front of us, which are for noting and noting A, B, C and D. But I've had a recommendation put forward by Councillor Coase. Does he want to elaborate on that proposal which he said about? And if he does, could he say what it is, and then I will take the legal advice when we go on that and go through the motions of taking a seconder if it's required and everything else. So over to you,
Thanks.
Simon.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I would like to see us, this committee recommend that we adopt the King's Council compliant appropriate assessment methodology as evidenced by Wessex Water regarding phosphate mitigation, and that we publish a public register of each wastewater cycling centre. That's on the Tone, the Parrot and the Brew, are the ones that we're talking about, so that we avoid double counting. And
But I've just had whispered in my ear that we can't do that until we've had the response from Natural England.
Okay.
Whether that's correct or not, I
okay,
don't
if
know,
if
but-
that's the case, then there's not much point in my reading the rest of it out.
Chair, if I could,
But I will let the legal officer respond, so.
Chair, I could just, I will confirm that we can't take that proposal until we have all the information. We're still waiting to hear from Natural England. It would be, it would almost certainly lead to challenge
Well,
if we didn't.
thank you, Chair, and thank you, Leslie, for your advice.
Thank you for that, Simon. Right, members of the committee, we have the recommendation on page 60 that the Strategic Planning Committee notes. Now, do you want me to take them individually or take them en bloc? A, B, C, and D, and could I have a show of hands, please? That's unanimous. Thank you very much. Well, it's been quite a long sort of interesting meeting, and I think everyone has been able to express their views. But there is one recommendation which has been suggested by Simon Coles, that the executive member does attend the next meeting, and I think that's important for all of us moving forward. And I cannot say when the next meeting is because it seems to be missing off my piece of paper. It says December, 18th of December for your diaries, gentlemen. I don't even know what day it is.
Thursday.
Thursday, the 18th of December. Okay, thank you very much.